The city of Johannesburg released its 2014-2015 financial year annual report this week as it comes to the end of term of its current tenure. The number of municipal entities that achieved clean audits increased from 4 to 6, and these included the Johannesburg Roads Agency, Pick It Up, and the Johannesburg Development Agency.
We believe that we've been on a journey from a qualified audit on the slides of the GCFO in 2009, 10, 10, 11. We've been on a journey to incrementally improve from entity to entity, to core department to department financial management. There will be issues like the issues of losses, material losses at power, at water that we're working on. We've invested in, the upgrade of intake points, the upgrade of substations, the upgrade of meters and all that to stem the losses of power and electricity. So these losses would still be within the limits that we don't like, and the Auditor General will highlight those.
The city's Chief Financial Officer put into perspective some of the key points and achievements for the last financial year.
For the year ended June 2015, the city achieved revenue of 42 billion rand. This revenue was 8% higher than the prior year. And the main contributors to this revenue, as has been the case, 52% of that refers to the service charges, which is electricity largely and water, as well as refuse collection fees that the city collects. 18% coming from property and 21% from grants, operational grants. Now, the story of this slide really is that the city, in order to fund its operational budget, the city has to self-generate 80% of the total required revenue, and only 20% comes from the grants. Against that, to also fund our activities, we have to collect the same revenue that we generate, and our collection rate was 92% for the year under review. As I move to the expenses, these are now in the activities that we funded for service delivery purposes. The big chunk of 36% or 33% of this 38 billion rand was from bulk purchases. So as we purchase electricity and water that are referred to in the revenue side, we recognize the expenditure on this side and we show the revenue on the other side. The employee-related costs have been contained over the years. Our contribution to the total expenditure is 23%. The National Treasury benchmark is 30%. This 23%, ladies and gentlemen, is very competitive if you look at the rest of the local government. I also want to reflect on the increase of 12% year on year. This reflects the city's push towards increasing resources for service delivery, notwithstanding the environment that we're operating under. As I move to the total assets that have increased by 17% in total, the city of Johannesburg's assets are worth 78 billion rand. And this is driven largely by the increased capital spending or infrastructure spending, as alluded in the prior presentations. I'll get into CapEx later. Our cash and cash equivalents, again in this environment that we have maintained just around 5 billion rand, notwithstanding the fact that we've had to increase our spending on infrastructure delivery, as well as on the operational expenditure that I alluded to earlier. And this, of course, excludes the amounts that we set aside to ensure that when the loans and the bonds that we have funded ourselves on become due or fall due, we are able then to successfully redeem them. I have to say in this current financial year, we've successfully redeemed just under 1 billion rand. On the surpluses, this is the city's strategy that we've communicated over the years, and we continue on that thread. And really what we are generating here is surpluses to augment the grants that we receive from national. So we've successfully managed to achieve just under 4 billion rand. It is in line with the budget and also marginally higher than last year's achievement. On the CapEx, I think what is important to note is the trend that we have managed to achieve. If you look at 2013 to 2015, you'll see that we have more than doubled our spending on infrastructure delivery. That is a significant achievement, and that requires the operations of the city to really be robust and to generate sufficient cash to support this type of increase.
With the weakening rand and volatility in the global markets, we spoke with City Manager Trevor Fowler about Johannesburg's targets for this financial year.
The one thing that's very clear, that the cost of imported items that we may have for transformers, etc., will have gone up. There are other areas where costs will have gone up, and also the growth in the economy is expected to be lower, so it would be much more difficult for consumers. And that's something that we'd want to take into account and ensure that we assist consumers in meeting their obligations, but also so that we can meet the obligations to the citizen by providing the kind of infrastructure, but that requires funds. So I won't be able to give you a target at the moment, because I think that's something we'll do when we do the budget.
What measures have been put in place to mitigate debt?
Well, the key questions that we look at in terms of mitigating our debt is, one, to ensure that we have proper credit control, and ensuring that those who are delinquent in paying join those who pay willingly. And we address that by ensuring that those people are informed. We now have SMSs, text messages go out to people to remind them, and so that we encourage people to meet their obligations. That's the first step. The second is that as we improve our liquidity and we improve how we do our finances, we are able to get our borrowings at a much lower rate. And as you can see, our debt, I was dealing with the debt to us, but there's also debt of the city. We do that through ensuring that we stay within the financial ratios. The target from our debt to revenue ratio is it's 45%, and we're well below that target. We're at 38%. So we have lots of room to be able to take more debt and really address the infrastructure. We do so responsibly by ensuring that in the following, once you take debt, you have to take into account that debt is there the next year. So you have to ensure that your revenue matches the debt that you have. The second is that we also ensure that we follow up on all of our debt. So some of our past debt, we've put in special measures to follow up on that debt, and we've collected hundreds of millions of past debt to ensure that the debt to us is also collected.
Food insecurity and infrastructure are two of the key areas you did speak about. Can you take me through the other key areas that you're going to be focusing on for 2016?
The food insecurity is something that we're addressing. Over 39,000 households have been addressed, assisted, to ensure that they are not food insecure. And we know that as you have slower economic growth, you also have job losses, and people having to address that. And we have what we call an extended social package, which assists people to get them to be on our indigent register, to ensure that they are able to make arrangements to pay, and where they need social assistance, we will assist them to get such social assistance. So those are some of the measures. And on the infrastructure, it's really investing, as I mentioned earlier, mentioning on resurfacing of roads. We've done 676 lane kilometers this past year. We will continue with that program to ensure that people don't have potholes, that the quality of our roads are good. We're investing in the M1 and M2 to ensure that though that infrastructure remains at a level that it should be, and we're now investing quite heavily on it. And unfortunately, there are delays in traffic, which we try to assist people by having proper signage, but also having proper intersection controls to ensure that the traffic moves a bit faster. So those are the kinds of areas. We're also investing in water to ensure that people have basic water. Over 94% of the informal settlements now have water. We set a target of 90%, and noting that urban migration is one of the biggest challenges that we have. Over 10,000 people come to Johannesburg a month, and they're not all going to find housing, and obviously we try to address limiting the informal settlements, but we also invest in housing. So we invested fairly heavily in housing, and we also invest in upgrading the infrastructure to support existing housing. So we're also ensuring that along corridors of what we refer to as corridors of freedom, along the Louis Botha corridor, the Turffontein, in Turffontein, but the one through Empire Perth and the other one to Barra, that those traffic along there is assisted by people being able to use public transport, and we've increased the number of public transport passengers and the quality of the service for people to get from one point to the other. And along there is where we're encouraging people to invest in housing, and so that we can densify and create opportunities for people to not only have housing, but to have housing that's close to services, close to consumer activities, but also close to work.